Welcome to another episode of Miami Cop Talk. Visit us at MiamiCopTalk.com. With us is Robert Asencio and Raul Correa discussing the latest issues in public safety, law enforcement, what's in the news with invited guests. And again, visit us, help us grow our audience. We are one community, one voice. And let's get ready to start another episode of Miami Cop Talk. New episode Mondays with Miami Cop Talk. How you doing, Robert?
I'm doing great, Raul. Thank you for holding down the fort last week. I was out in the field, and then I had a little bit of eye surgery. So if my eye's a little off, you know what happened. But
Well,
I look forward to this
actually,
conversation.
we just started May, and I don't know if you knew this because I was, you do your little research, and I do my research. We have our people call us and give us our data that we need for the show. So May is Vision Health Month. I don't know if you knew that.
I did not.
Yeah, it's Vision Health Month. Now, aside from a whole bunch of other stuff, we have May is also High Blood Pressure Awareness Month, Stroke Awareness Month, Mental Health Awareness Month, Skin Cancer Awareness Month, which we start spring and summer and all the good stuff outdoors, which leads to Asthma and Allergy Awareness Month. There's so many awareness issues. ALS, a serious issue, ALS. And most importantly, I've lost my mom last year, but
my condolences.
This Sunday is Mother's Day. So happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. And in pre-Mother's Day celebration, I think tomorrow is Cinco de Mayo, and I know Robert's got a few drinks. He's going to be enjoying some adult beverages he'll be enjoying tomorrow.
Yeah, responsibly, some Mexican beer. That's definitely on the menu.
Absolutely.
That and probably a good, might as well stay Mexican. I think I'm going to go get me some enchiladas.
Yeah, exactly.
What's a good Mexican place in Miami?
I don't know. I do Taco Bell. Taco Bell on Tuesdays. Taco Bell on Tuesdays. That's the thing I do. Oh man. Well, Robert, as we start, talking about the topics of the day in our A block of our show, let's go ahead and it was on the news yesterday. Michael Hernandez, the individual that killed a student at Southwood Middle School, if you remember that, it was a while back ago. Your comments on that Southwood incident, Robert?
Yeah, man. I think you were at the scene, right?
I was at the scene the day that happened. I was at the scene. It was a really, really sad, horrible situation.
What did you, since you were at the scene, I was at headquarters at the time. Why don't you lay down the reference on what happened for those people that don't know? We can share
basically
the story.
not to get into the gory details, but basically it was a student by the name of Michael Hernandez who killed his friend Jaime Goff in the second story bathroom of Southwood Middle School. I know we had an officer at the scene at the time. I believe his name was Michael Drury, the officer from school police that was at the school and attempted to render first aid and whatnot. And it was a real sad situation. My heart goes out to both families. I know we had all our resources out there. Miami-Dade Police obviously was there helping out, and their homicide unit took over. But it was a real sad situation. I really want to give props and to the family of Jaime Goff, amazing family. If you saw them on the news, they were heartbroken over the loss of their son, obviously, but they were also saddened by the loss of Michael Hernandez, and they expressed such feelings on the news. They're a great family, and they suffered a great loss, but they have amazing faith, and they were really, really caring in their comments yesterday about the death of Michael Hernandez, who was the murderer of their son, which is an amazing thing how faith can transform someone. But I could tell you that being at the scene at the time, we had our command bus that we had just acquired a command bus, mobile command center was there on the scene, and a lot of what we did, as you will know, Robert, law enforcement, as they do what they do in critical incidents, they revert back to training. but there's so much that is not covered in training, so much that is not, you know, in the classroom, covered when we do training at the academy or whatnot. So there was a lot of uh, management by crisis that day. That is for sure. Remember, you had a school full of students. Uh, the media was outside doing what they do. How do you navigate middle school full of students with a deceased student in a restroom? And it was just the logistics and that, you know, a lot of the officers were on the scene from multiple agencies. This was a first for them, and it was unfortunately, like I said, management by crisis. And all in all, it turned out, if you can say, as best as possible under the circumstances, but it was a very tragic event.
Yeah, from what I remember, so the two boys, the victim and the subject, go into the bathroom, and there are those that the story that count the story or recall the story as the subject lures the victim into the bathroom. Had been one of his best friends. He slays the kid by cutting the kid's throat. Jaime, the victim, and then he goes back. The subject goes back. Michael Hernandez goes back to class, and
Yeah, he went back to class with the knife,
yeah,
with blood on his shirt, and
and that's where he was. That's where he was found in classroom, right?
correct, correct. I think one of his teachers pointed out to the officers that we were sweeping the school. That he had bloodstains on his shirt and whatnot. Again, you know, you could read the case files. You know, a lot of it is public record now, but it was again a devastating event because we had a middle school student, and for all that's being, you know, talked about in the news, middle school students, their level of maturity is not there where it should be. And you know, this individual, I guess, had a fascination with knives. This Michael Hernandez guy had a fascination with knives, and you know, again, it's just heartbreaking. I believe Jaime Goff, the victim, you know, played the violin, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
He was a great kid, great kid.
yeah,
And
and it goes back to what we've been talking about on this program, on this Miami Cop Talks theme here is police training, right? And so you know, you have a school full of kids, you have a homicide of a child, you don't know who the subject is. Now you have you know, occupied school. You have to evacuate the kids. You have to search for the subject, and you have to preserve the crime scene, and also identify if there are any witnesses there.
correct.
That was a chaotic scene, man, and
Yeah,
the fact that
yeah, yeah.
you
And you
know,
know, from crime scene, processing the scene to you know, extracting the deceased person from the school and medical and stuff. It was just you know, horrible thing all around. But you know, the officers on the scene uh, did amazing work. A long time ago, you know, we tend to put those negative thoughts in our back of our mind and move forward. And I can remember being there, and politicians and our government leaders coming on board and giving their 2 cents worth, which barely was worth that at the time. Um, you know, but you know, I
well,
guess another chapter has been closed now that
yeah.
Michael Hernandez is
But that goes to something that we've been talking about, Raul. Violence, right? The officers on the street are colleagues. You know, there's a perception, right? A lot of perception is that police officers are brutalizing the community. Well, that's not the case. Yes, there are some police officers who are bad seeds, and law enforcement works to get rid of those. And those that are not dealt with, the public, you know, has a right to go after, right, and pursue legal ways of holding them accountable. But
correct.
in the last week, if I'm not mistaken, here in Miami-Dade County, there's been a huge call for the community to come together over the violence on the street. We had a 3-year-old child that was murdered a week ago at his birthday party, right? And
Correct.
then you had some other people who were victims of homicide or shootings. So at any given time during the month or week or day, you have people shot in Dade County. And that is certainly playing out as a high level of violence. And that's what our officers are facing. So, how did you feel when you went after somebody that was not going to be compliant, that was violent towards you as a police officer, where you're lawfully trying to arrest or stop that person from committing harm to somebody else? How did you feel, Raul?
That's a very good question. I didn't feel very good, and as we continue our conversation, let me let our listeners and everyone know this is Miami Cop Talk. Visit us at miamicoptalk.com. And this is Mondays with Miami Cop Talk. And Robert, I'll tell you, when I was out on the road, there were some people that were very, very gracious and welcoming. And when they saw you show up, they were so happy you were there.
Yeah.
And then there were others that felt the total opposite, the other side of the spectrum. And it goes back to what you were saying. I will tell you this in this next topic that we're moving into in our next segment. We talk about technology, and technology is the cutting edge of everything. I can remember going back to what we were talking earlier in our previous block, the Michael Hernandez thing. Communications was horrible. We were inside a school that was basically a fortress school. It's a school that doesn't have any windows. It becomes a hurricane shelter during hurricane season and whatnot. And transmission from inside the school was horrendous. So it made it that much harder for the officers that were in the school if they needed to, communicate. I know the officer on the scene, when he was trying to request assistance, it became an issue because, again, as a transmission in these fortress schools, you have 15, 20-inch thick concrete walls that make radio transmissions very hard to come out of that structure. So that's another obstacle that law enforcement deals with, depending on where they're at. I know technology has improved. They have repeaters and all kinds of new technology out there for officers from the time of this incident back in the day and to now. Now we have drones. I believe you actually have a video ready to show on some of the technology that's out there now that helps officers address the violence that you're talking about when you get to a scene. How to address those shoot, no, don't shoot scenarios. I don't know if you have that video queued up.
Man. Well, I'd like to share that, but going back, and while I set this up, bear with me here a minute so I can cue this up. Whenever you have a subject that's not complying, a whole set of range of emotions go through your head. And if you've got good quality training, it's certainly you always revert back to training and it helps. But here you have a scenario. ABC News in 2017 in New York, specifically Eyewitness News 7 in New York, ABC News again. They followed the NYPD in their training utilizing virtual reality. So let's go ahead and view the video, and it'll play into kind of tie into what we've been talking about.
Yeah, and for our listeners on podcasts, basically, the virtual reality game that you see kids do on a daily basis, from a Call of Duty to you name it, this is now morphed into, the military's been using it for a long time. This has been morphed into day-to-day training, and it's a big budget item. So this video is basically NYPD, utilizing the virtual reality platform out there for a shoot, don't shoot scenario. And I don't know if you can hear some of the audio on this.
They should be able to hear this, Raul. They should be able to hear this. And this is also Homeland Security and University of Louisiana, so LSU. So Louisiana State University, which has been playing a big role with Homeland Security since, in domestic preparedness since 2011. All right, I'm going to go ahead and play it. How's that?
Let's go.
You're watching New York City cops in virtual reality. I got one coming out. I got chairs and tables. We're running out. I don't hear any shots. You ready? On you. Oh, go ahead. Copy. All right, let's move.
I mean, you're dealing with a generation that's very familiar with cell phones and video games and so forth. So this isn't foreign to them.
All right, move up.
You're seeing things from perspective they'll never get. We can do that on NPR.
Hands to the floor. Shoot down. Shoot down. No, anybody who can hear the sound of my voice. Not appropriate thing. Let's move out. And stay away from the door.
Maybe 5-10 years ago, there was a little bit of hesitancy to use something like this. So now we're getting guys wanting to come.
Good. End scenario. Index.
Imagine the possibilities. Starters, the NYPD conducting active shooter drills at the World Trade Center.
I got a shooter at the plaza. Man down.
Now they can in virtual reality.
He's secure.
We have like a bunch of cameras around the space and we're tracking your position. We're putting markers on your arm, legs, on the backpack, and on your headset. Cool. The guns we're using were meant to play airsoft. We have a little bit of a recoil.
So the idea is we want to show them things should operate the same way they would outside than they were here.
All right, officers, the scenario that you're going to be going into is you have a call for service at the school principal's office.
I got the reception on the right. Is that something up to me?
Communicate, watch your angles.
I get more scenarios in a much shorter time. You get really immersed. There's a lot of heart pounding, and it's very realistic. So it's a great training aid for us to get more experience. You're watching a week-long training program at a state-of-the-art facility in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. The first time the NYPD is using VR.
It adds another whole component. You can change the scenarios. You don't need that much space. So we're taking a good look at it.
A couple hundred NYPD officers have taken part in this pilot training this first week. The goal is for police departments across the nation to endorse this tech so this training can be incorporated nationwide.
Scenario is report of a man with a gun. Report of a man with a gun.
Take it back. NYPD is the host of the program, training provider through the Department of Homeland Security, Louisiana State University, and V-Armed.
I got people hurt here. I need to get them help, okay? Let's drop that weapon, let that man go, please, sir. All right, if I let him go, you guys not gonna hurt me, right? Absolutely not, sir. We're gonna work this out for you, okay? Just let him go. All right. Cut that weapon down, please, sir. Justin, grab him. All right, he's in custody.
So this is a tool that within the same environment, in this case, this is a complete high school that we developed. And we can see it in 3D or 2D. They can really easily configure scenarios with various avatars, whether alive, dead, configure their behaviors.
We can gather statistics. So, once you have 100 people doing the same scenario, we can actually draw conclusions from it.
We're looking to see where their muzzles are, no weapon safety issues.
Got two bodies in the front of this guy.
Almost all the scenarios that have been developed here are based on real incidents.
Shots fired. Okay, we got shots fired on this one.
Hey, move it. I got rear. Was there? Shots fired. Let's do door 10. I got rear. Police department, show me your hands. Shoot him.
Our mission is to do national training across the nation. So after this pilot here with the NYPD, we will take it on the road.
I got one coming out in Williamsburg.
Shooter down. We got multiple victims. Buses. Supervisor on the scene, please.
Stefan Kim, Channel 7, Eyewitness.
Sorry, you mentioned when we started the video that military has been using this application for a long time,
Yeah.
VR, virtual reality, or similar to training, simulator training.
With the drones and whatnot.
And essentially a lot of the people, at least the violence in Miami-Dade County is being committed by people that are, the majority of them, in the age range between 18 and mid-20s, right? A lot of those, not saying that the games are causing them to play, but certainly they're honing in their skills, those that are violent prone. It is an issue. But let's talk about police work. With all this scrutiny on law enforcement now, and all this added exposure, added accountability, added awareness, added dissecting and second guessing police officers? Does training take on a new meaning for law enforcement? And you're a trainer. What do you think?
Absolutely. Training is ongoing every day. Every day is a training scenario. And I think when you become complacent, that's when the issues arise. You talked about violence in our community or the young people. I think basically the maturity level, the cognitive thinking is not developed to where it should be. Even in their early 20s, it's unfortunate. But there are many studies out there that show a correlation between violent video games, and violence, perpetuating violence in our communities. I think that law enforcement needs to look at a holistic approach when it comes to training. If all the training is bang bang, shoot them up, take no prisoners, and I think they're missing the boat. There needs to be community relations engagement. There needs to be tactical training ready for whatever comes. The word tactical in itself, I've said it time and time again, the company I work for, tactical means artfully arranged or planned. So to have the logistics, the artful planning and engagement, to know when to engage, when to not engage, when to disengage, when to take action, when to not take action. Those are all things that I think people don't understand when it comes to law enforcement. They get scrutinized, and we've talked about scenarios where, the recent incident, I believe her name was Michaela Bryant, the girl with the knife. They interviewed someone, and he said, listen, if my daughter's the one holding the knife and the police show up, I don't want them to shoot her. But if my daughter's the one that's going to get stabbed by the girl with the knife, I want them to shoot her. So, and that's that world that law enforcement lives in. Do you take action? Do you not take action? Do you sit back and finish your coffee and donut and let the community, destroy itself? Or do you engage and try to do the best you can with the training you've gotten? I know
Let me ask you a question. Because you're going to something here that we know. So we know that the added scrutiny on police, whether rightfully or not, because you can't use, what's the saying? You can't use the same paintbrush to brush or to describe all law enforcement. You have good law enforcement, majority of law enforcement professional. They train on a regular basis. They do the right thing.
But they get overlooked. They get overlooked, unfortunately, by one bad apple ruins the bunch, and media and society focuses on that one bad apple.
But my point is, for those that will be continuing in professional law enforcement, because law enforcement is not going anywhere. That's the line that defends the public, keeps safety, keeps our community safe. It divides us between a society of laws and law-abiding citizens versus anarchy or just outright lawlessness, as we see in other countries. But what role does training take on in law enforcement? Do we go to less than lethal now in these high-risk encounters? I mean, you're a trainer. What do you think? Do they use beanbags in a situation where you have a subject armed? It's unrealistic, right?
Listen,
let's talk about that.
It's a very interesting conversation because it ties into many aspects of our society. Should we have greater gun control? And if we do that, then maybe we don't need to have the militarized type of law enforcement response to some of these events. There's a complex conversation.
But that's unrealistic, man. That's unrealistic. I mean,
well, no, because if you look at
taking guns away from people is not going to happen, right? That's not going to happen.
No, it's not. But when you look at the European model of policing, which a lot of people are advocating for in the United States, that European style of policing in many European nations, law enforcement, a lot of the officers are not armed. They actually have officers that are armed, and when an officer gets to a scene, he'll request an officer with a firearm. Some of our campus police officers throughout the country are not armed on campus. They're because that is the rules.
That's becoming highly unrealistic, right? To have an officer on campus anywhere without armed. But I'll tell you what I think is different here. The comparison to the U.S. to European nations that where the police are not armed, or other countries where police are not armed, is not a fair comparison. Because I know that
no, you're right.
But bear with me one second. Police officers, well, actually, society as we have it in this country permits for long guns to be bought, right? And very few places in this country, very few jurisdictions in this country do not allow firearms, right? They're citizens to carry firearms. So we know we have a lot of firearms in on the street. So we know we're not going to take guns away from people. We know that there's an abundance of firearms. I like to see more control with the bad guys as opposed to the good guys. But how do you differentiate a good guy from a bad guy who hasn't been convicted?
Correct. Correct.
So
Well, I'm just saying it's a very complex conversation, and I think people are just, they're just, addressing the outskirts of what needs to be brought up. There's a lot of technology out there that can address some of our issues. You just played a video on virtual reality that can address some of our training needs. It's a very complex conversation that needs to be had. I agree. Guns ain't going anywhere, but some are having that conversation about should guns be maybe limited in some way, shape, or form. I can basically, me, Robert, I can, discuss any issue from any angle. If you ask me for my personal opinion, I think we need more police, more training, more protection, more law enforcement support. I back the blue 100%. Do we need to weed out the bad apples within our ranks and files? Absolutely. But I believe the focus by certain segments of our community and our society and our politicians I think it's unfair.
Yeah.
But hey, that's the way it works.
Both sides of the aisle. It's interesting because I saw a video today. It was I think it was in Kansas, where the law enforcement, I don't know if it was the mayor or the combination with the police department, but they opened up their training to the public, right? And the media came and participated. And you have a subject in the scenario confronting another person, and you have the simulator, an officer inside the simulator, telling the person, the subject in the scene, let me see your hands, let me see your hands, let me see your hands. The subject, turns out, has a gun. But before you can see the gun, they place the reporter and the citizens in the position of a police officer confronting this guy. And the guy looks like he's going to beat the woman. And, the citizens and the reporters shot after the subject killed the victim, right? So we go back to the young lady, a 13-year-old, who had the knife and was going to stab the girl or was acting aggressively towards the other girl, right? And you have the officer who shoots. Most people said, oh, it's a 13-year-old girl, it's a little girl, we didn't shoot. But was the officer right? Was it a good shoot? And would most people take the shot? Or would they allow another person to get stabbed?
No, and was it the basic question is, was in compliance with policy, procedures, guidelines, trainings, and state law? If the answer to all that is yes, then I don't know what we're discussing here. But what happens is we need to have the discussion. We needed to have the conversation. I'll put myself out there. I'll tell you based on what I saw, don't have all the facts, but based on what I saw and what the news is put out there and the circumstances, I believe it was a good shoot. Very unfortunate loss of life. I've always said that. Life is precious at every stage, as far as I'm concerned. Loss of life is horrible. But when you look at that, I believe it was a good shoot. But then when you have individuals like LeBron James making his statements, you're next and whatever, it really demoralizes.
But they're
inflames. It demoralizes those in the men and women that are trying to go out there to do the best they can in law enforcement. And that's why recruitment retention is so hard nowadays in the ranks of law enforcement.
Chicago just lost 400. They're 400 officers down.
Yeah.
And do you know the Chicago police has? Well, first of all, on the streets in Chicago, any given weekend, you have a multitude of murders.
Oh, absolutely.
So when they're down 400 cops,
Seattle's down 200, and some of Minneapolis took some funding from their budget after the George Floyd situation, and now they realize it was a huge mistake, and now they're infusing millions of dollars back into the police department, and they're trying to hire over 200 cops. What happens is when you're playing politics with public safety and the communities out there that
What could
need.
go wrong? What could go wrong when you play politics?
Oh man! And you know what? And if you look at the majority of the resources in law enforcement, go to poor communities that need the assistance. If you live in a private gated community, you don't need the law enforcement attention because you live in a private gated community. But if you don't, if you live in an if you live in a urban inner city, Chicago, South End of Chicago, man, you want cops on every street corner. But hey, you know what? Again, we've talked about it. Playing politics with policing is a dangerous thing. But as we get ready to close out this episode, Robert, why
don't we tell people to drop us an opinion, right?
Absolutely.
Drop us an opinion. Let's talk about this scenario, this situation of shoot, don't shoot. When should police act? Should they go to less lethal? Is less lethal the answer for every scenario that's unscripted, unplanned, that you can't plan for? Drop us a line, MiamiCopTalk.com.
Absolutely. Visit us at MiamiCopTalk.com. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, where we'll be posting this today, Miami Cop Talk on Mondays. And we thank you for listening. We thank you for tuning in. And until you hear us again, see us again, please stay tuned to MiamiCopTalk.com. This has been another episode of Miami Cop Talk with Robert Asencio and Raul Correa. Thank you.
Bye.
You have been listening to Miami Cop Talk. We hope you have enjoyed this episode, and visit us at MiamiCopTalk.com to get the latest on all our broadcasts. We want to thank our partners and sponsors that have made Miami Cop Talk possible. And on behalf of Robert Asencio and Raul Correa, we want to thank you for listening to Miami Cop Talk. Stay connected and visit us at MiamiCopTalk.com.